Okay, hold on for a second. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, Deepak, it is visible.
Okay, yeah, and feel free to unmute if you have any questions. Stop me. I'm gonna try to keep this very interactive, and based on the question that you guys gonna ask, I will decide whether we want to go more complex or keep it simple. So this is very much, I'm going to drive the session based on all of your input. I'm going to keep my camera off just to keep the bandwidth. If you guys want, I don't know, you don't want to see me when I'm talking, so I'll keep it off and then we can talk. Feel free to unmute in the chat and all of that. Okay. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining the session. What we are going to talk in the session is all about Power Automate approvals. Little bit about myself. I think it's already been introduced. I'm Deepak Shrivastava, Microsoft MVP, MCT. I also run Houston Power Platform User Group. So if you guys ever want to see that, there is some recording in the different session that we do is going to be available. Some other social media link, my YouTube channel. If you want to connect me on Twitter, this is my Twitter handle, my website, and LinkedIn. All of these are there. If you have any question in the future after this session, feel free to connect with me. I'm very much try to help you there if I can. Okay, straight. I'm going to jump on to the approval. I'm not gonna waste any more time. So flow approvals. If you are using Power Platform, and especially if you are using Power Automate, you may be either based on your day-to-day work, or maybe if you are doing some POC or any work, you maybe encounter that approval is very important part of any work that you do, right? And it can be a simple approval where you are sending the request for, let's say, travel request or request for leave, or it can be more complex where you are creating in end-to-end workflow applications where multiple people are involved. When one person is approved, it should go to the next person or they can send it back and forth. So there are many scenarios that you can think from the approval points of view. Now, how Flow or Power Automate can help you with that, there is an inbuilt action in Power Automate that's called the approvals. And I will show you in the live scenario, in the live Power Automate as well. But this approval action, there's only one action with three sub action, as you can say, that you can use to create simple workflow approvals, or can go very complex as well. This approval action, as you see here, it has three sub actions. You can create an approval. That is what where you use this action to create approval. That approval will start and then flow will end there. Then you have another option where you can start and wait for an approval. This is where if you use this particular action in your approval, your flow will start, your approval process will start, and then workflow will wait for whoever you have sent that approval request for their response. They can either approve it or reject it, or if you are going to use any custom actions, they can respond accordingly. And the last one is the wait for an approval. Generally, the first, create an approval and wait for an approval, are somehow goes hand to hand because you just don't want to create an approval and do nothing about it, right? So you create an approval, do something, and then you will have another action for wait and approval. Based on my experience, what I have seen, what other places, whether it's like a actual enterprise workflow or if someone is doing for the personal use or POC, most probably you are going to end up with this start and wait for an approval. This will give you what you need from the approval points of view. Then in this start and wait for approval is going to give you some different or 4 different approval type. Okay, and now you need to understand what is the approval type means. When you are going to create an approval workflow, it's not just that you are creating an approval, there should be a logic behind it. And the logic is whether when you are going to send the approval request to someone, they can approve or they can reject. But then there is a chances that you are going to send these approval requests to more than one person. And if you are sending it to more than one person, do you want all of them to approve or respond, or do you want just first person to respond or approve? I think I have a hands up. Go ahead and ask question if this is the question that you want to ask. Or it was by mistake. Okay, I think it's by
Sorry,
mistake.
it was my mistake. Yeah, sorry.
That's perfectly fine. Okay, so that's the approve and reject action where either you want all of them to approve or reject or respond, or you just want first person. So for example, you send a request to 10 different people and the first person respond, you want that your workflow to end. So this is one, like two type of approval type, right? And then some cases, approve and reject is not the only thing that you want to collect when you are sending the approval request. You may want to customize the response that you are looking from your approver, right? So that's where you have this custom response. There are two similar, whether you want to wait for all of the person whom you send this request to respond, or you just want to receive from first one and then continue. So these are the key thing. And in overall, the approvals are very simple in flow. So they are complex. The complexity is going to start how we are going to use it and what is our use case going to be. But in general, this is all that you need to know if you really want to work on the or use approvals in the flow. There are a few other things like, for example, you can set up parallel or sequential work approvals. Sequential means that if you are sending the approval request to 3 different people, you want to make sure that it happens one after another. So my request goes to the person 1, he will approve or reject. If he reject, the approval will end there. If he approve, it will move to the next person. If next person approve or reject, based on that, you can keep going. So this is called sequential because it is going in the sequence. Then you also have parallel, where you want to send the same request or same approval request to 2 different people. And some cases, like for example, you are sending request for approval to the HR and also for IT, and both needs to be approved. There's a different status that you want to capture for both of different either group or people, and you want to store that as a final approval for your request. So this is a sequential in the parallel. And then you can also have, as I already told about the multiple approval options, everyone must approve first to respond and all of that. One thing I'm hoping if you are using approvals, you know that you can actually send the approvals or set external user as approver also. So the person just not needs to be in your Active Directory. You can even send these requests to outside of AD. But there is a quick catch there. So for example, if I get an email address for external user and I use it as approver in my approval flow, that person should have a valid license. It's Office 365 license so that he or she can actually access the link or the approval request that you send. If they don't have license, it won't work. Okay, so keep in mind if you are using external user as an approver. Moving to the next one. Now we talk about, okay, Pratyaksh, I think you have hands up. You want to ask a
Yeah,
question?
hi Deepak.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Deepak, if I want to send a reminder to the approver, so how can I send it?
Definitely, we're gonna have a slide on this one. So hold on. That's the,
Okay,
I
okay,
think, yeah, I have that covered, and I'm gonna show you an example also once I do the live one.
sure,
So
sure.
keep your question with you. You will get the answer soon. Okay. So we talk about the type of approvals, what we can do now. Once we send the approval, how approvers are going to see them, or where I can find that what all requests or approvals are came to me. So there are multiple ways to see that. You have approval dashboard, that is you can see in your Power Automate studio. Then you will also have generally going to receive an email, so you can see in your mailbox. If you are using a Power Automate mobile app, you will get a notification there, and you can also receive a notification in Microsoft Teams. So once I'm gonna send one approval request, my approver will get all of these different notifications. We can control, we can disable. If we don't want to send, for example, email, there is a check that we can do. I'll show you. But generally, the normal recommendation says that we should keep all of these different all of these options open, because we want the approver to see when we are sending these approvals so they can see it and respond on time. Because that's the whole purpose of sending an approval request, that we want to get this approval as soon as possible. Right, so there's different ways. These are different ways that user can see what are different things assigned to them. Okay. This is the approval dashboard that you can see when you log into your make.powerautomate.com. And once you go to the left-hand side, there you can see the approval button there, where you can see the approvals, whatever approvals you have received. That means what all different action item that you have to perform. And in the sent, you will see whatever approval action you sent. That means if I have created an approval flow using my ID and send the approval request to different people, that will show up in the sent. And then history will show you all the different action that you have taken on the previous approval assignment. There are a few things here. Actually, most important part that I think you should be very carefully understand of this 28 days limit. Okay. When you are on this approval action, and I will show you that as well. If you go to the history tab, this is the history of all the approval actions that I have taken. This is not bound to this 28 days. It's going to show you more and more. This 28 days approval flow run history is the actual flow run history. So we're gonna create a flow that will have the approval actions that will have 28 days limit. So it's only going to show you last 28 run history, not the approval history that I did. Okay, so keep in mind, I think there is some confusion always happen that I cannot see my approvals beyond 28 days. Yes, I can see, I can go back days on all the approvals that I have took action. What I cannot see though, the particular flow that is using approvals as an action, that I can only see for 20 days, 28 days. Okay, moving to the next. Again, this is also very important. This applies to in general overall for any Power Automate flow that you are going to use or create, right? There are many templates. So whenever you are starting creating a Power Automate flow, I always recommend that start from the template. You may not find the exact what you are looking for, but it will give you a very much like a good head start. So you don't need to start from the scratch. Most of the time you will find exactly what you need. The only thing you need to change the connections and all of that, and your flow is ready. So you don't need to spend much time on doing everything from the scratch. So always utilize the flow template. Those are available. There are many. Okay. Before I go to this different scenario, let me quickly jump onto the Power Automate actual screen, and then I'll quickly show you guys some of the things that we have just discussed, so you get an idea of what I was talking about. Okay, so you log into make.powerautomate.com. If you are, I believe most of you are already using Power Automate, so you can go here. And this is what I was talking, the approvals. So if you go to this approvals tab, this is where you can see all of your received approvals, that these are the requests that someone have sent it to you as an approval. And as you can see, all of the different requests that I have received here. Sent is, as I said, what I have created. So any flow that I have created and I've sent for the approval request, you can see all of them here. And this is the history. This history of all the different actions that I have took. And if you can see, I'm keep going to, like, for example, even the back 1 year. So I can see all of the backtrack of what I did. This is for me, so this is not for all the users. So if in any case you want to create a big dump of all the approvals action that has been done across, then you may need to do some customizations to query the data from the different users, and that will be not easy way to do it. But for personal users, you can always see your all of your approvals that you have done before. Quickly on the template. So if you click on the template and go to the approval tab here, this is where you can see all the different templates that Microsoft has created. There are many. And I mean, so trust me, if you want to search your scenario, you will find some of them here listed that you can start from. So always recommendation, start from here. Okay. Now quickly, I'm going to create a new, I'm going to show instant flow for now to just show you those different actions that we have seen. And then we will actually, once we move forward, we will create a couple of scenarios. If my internet allow me to do that. Okay. So once you click on the news tab, here you can search for approvals and it will give you this approval actions. Once you select that, you can see you have 3 options. There is no more. If you click on see more, there is nothing. These are the 3 actions that you can have, and there is no trigger. Okay, so approval action only have these 3. Create an approval, start and wait for an approval, and wait for an approval. I'm going to mostly select start and wait for an approval, and then you can see all the different approval type. Approve and reject everyone, first to respond, and of course, custom response and custom response with at least 1 response. So these are the only options that you have. Let me see if we have any question, then we move to the scenario. So in the chat. Okay, so I think the question is start and wait approval. Everyone must approve out of multiple approve. If anyone reject, so it's depend if you are using everyone should respond. Actually, this is a good question. We will try. I mean, even I'm not sure. I think if someone reject, it's going to be the reject, but we will see. We will do that. We will check it live. Okay. Back to this. And now let's talk about the scenario that you can think of when you're working on the approvals. The first scenario where you may have a request. Let's say you are uploading a file in the SharePoint or on the OneDrive or somewhere, and you want that to be get up, sent for an approval. One person, they will get the request. They can either approve or reject. Simple scenario, a simplest form of approval. It doesn't read any too many things. So I'm going to quickly walk through this. The scenario is very simple, as you can see. File created, the approval request will goes to the approver. They can make the decision, and the status of the file will automatically update. It looks very simple, but sometime in some scenario, these kind of flow can be very powerful and very useful because you can quickly create them. You don't need to spend like hours and hours to creating such workflow, but you can create quickly and they can be very useful as you use in your personal use or maybe in your company. Then we go to a little bit more on the complex side where we have sequential approval. This is where I was talking that you can have these multiple approvers who are approving one after another. As you can see here, again, same thing is for a file approval request sent to the first level approver. The status will change. And then when that person is make the decision, if he reject, if he approve, it will goes to the next level. If he reject, the status will be sent to the rejected. And then happy path or positive path if approval to approve it or reject it. Based on that, you can have. This is also not very complex in a way because this is just an extension of what we have done in the simple workflow. Simple workflow, there's only 1 step and we are just making it 2 times. So once based on the decision of the first approver, you are making decision whether I need to send it to the next or I'm just sending the updated status to the rejected. Then we have the
Deepak,
parallel.
sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. Just that we wanted to take questions at end, but this question from Eric was just relevant to this part. So I'm posting that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
He's asking, is sequential approval generally available? I think I saw it Power Platform 2023 release wave 1.
When you say generally available means you can use it, means it's not, this is something, so this is something that is not really an action. This is something that you can create in the flow. But you are saying whether this is actually going to be an action. This is what your question is.
So Eric is saying that sequential approvals with multiple levels.
I'm not aware of this. Or maybe if you can means I'm not really following the question. When you say sequential approval with multiple levels, what do you mean by that?
Okay, he has posted a screenshot. No problem. We can come back to then once at the end of the session.
Yes, we can come back to
in,
this one. Yes,
yeah.
we can take a look. Yeah. Let me move to the next one. So then we have the parallel approvals. Parallel approvals are very similar to the first one. In case of it is going one after another, they are going running in the parallel. So sometime you have these scenario where you want to send the approval request, but these you can means it's the same request going to the two different people, and outcome of the both of those approvals doesn't really impact each other. So these are the scenario where you can create two parallel. So for example, here what you're seeing that when a new item created in SharePoint, or let's say a travel request, it is going to the manager to approve it and also going to the HR. Both needs to make a decision, and then based on the decision, individual status for these different users will be updated accordingly. So this can be a simple example of parallel, and you can have multiple different level of parallel branch here that you want to. Till this point of time, these are all basic. I would say that straightforward, simple to create workflow. Then in some scenario where you want to have more complex workflow, and generally it's called the state machine workflow because or state machine approvals, because they runs based on the state where that flow is. And I'm going to quickly show you this diagram, so this can give you a quick clear understanding of what state machine workflow is and where you can use it. So some scenario where you have, for example, let's say you are creating a approval flow for complex review and approval process. Okay, and when I say complex review and approval process, that means I have, as a submitter, I have created a request. Okay, then request first need to be reviewed by level 1, and the level 1 will have the possibility to approve it, or they can send back to me for more work, or they can reject it, right? So these are the three different states that needs to be maintained, and each state will drive the further or next step of your workflow. And let's say up in the positive path, level 1 reviewer said that, okay, everything looks good, I'm approving it. And when they approve it, this request should go to the next level, that is the final approver. And the final approver will also have the same functionality or capability where they can approve it, they can reject it, or they can also send it back for more information. So to address all of these different states that your approval or your flow can be, your approvals should be managing all these status accordingly. Okay, so when I'm submitting the request, it is sent for review or sent for approval. When level 1 or reviewer is reviewing it, there can be either approved, or it can be need more information. So that is going back to your submitter who created, or it will be just rejected that I don't want to do anything. Similarly, level 2 will have the 3 different status. It can be approved, or it can be go back to the submitter or requester for more information, and then third one is rejected. So these are and this is more applicable scenario encounter if you're working on any of your project for different in your company where you want to create more complex scenario. You can have these kind of scenario. It is sequential, but more complex side of sequential workflow. Okay. Quickly now go back to the flow, and then we will create some flow and then see how we can use those different scenarios. Okay. So here I'm going to actually delete all of this because we need to create the trigger. Okay, so the first flow we will see a simple flow where we're going to just see how these actions work. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to search for SharePoint trigger when a file is created. This one is good. Okay, let me. So generally what you do here, this is pretty standard. the trigger, what we are using here when a file is created. So what we are trying to do, we are saying that when file is created, we are going to start our process to request for an approval. Okay. I'll add a new step, and here you can search for approvals. We are going to use the start and wait for an approval. Approval type, I'm going to use this one, simple, just keep it simple, right? And the moment you select, it's going to ask you more information. So what it is asking, the title. Now, generally when you're working on any of the approval, this should be very well defined, and so that when I'm going to receive this approval request, I should be able to understand what I'm getting. Okay, so for example, and you can do all sort of combination here. So I'm say, please review. And because I am working on the file, I can actually see all the file properties that just has been created. And if I search for the name, I can use the name. So what I'm saying, please review this file. Then you have assign to. There's multiple ways you can use this assign to field. You can hard code, or you can even have your SharePoint list. Let me show you the SharePoint list that I'm working to use this. So this is a SharePoint list, very simple list I have created. Just trying to keep it simple, not making it too complex. But you can even have a column here where you can have a name for the approver, or you can read these from other SharePoint list if you want to. For now, I'm going to just put myself here. Okay, then you have the details. One thing that I like to show you, if you can read this, it is saying Markdown supported. Now, what is Markdown? Markdown is nothing but it's kind of an HTML language that you can use to create on the fly. This like instead of plain HTML, you can have the HTML, then when it rendered to your Outlook or somewhere, it can be looks pretty good. Okay, so that's the one thing that's supported here. So if you want to send a good looking message, you can use Markdown. The Markdown itself is a little complex to create, but you can find some example, as you can see here in the aka.ms approval details. So you can have some example there. For today, we're not going to do that. So I'm going to quickly put the file name here as well. Or maybe I can use the description. Okay, file name. Okay, item link. Remember, whenever you are using this action, item link, whether you are doing when a file is created or when an item is created, you will always get this link to item. So always use this one, because this is going to give you direct link to the item that you are going to send or using. So it will be easy for approver to click and see it. If I click on the show advanced option, this is where you can see some more detail that you can provide. That is not required, optional, but you can always do that. So for example, you can add an email address for requester who is requesting this if you like to. Then enable notification. I can disable it. And if I do that, no notification will be sent. And this enable reassignment. So this is actually a feature that going to allow approver to reassign to someone else. As a creator or as an owner of this flow, once the approval process starts, I cannot reassign. Once it's sent, it's sent. They need to either reject it or approve it. But if you have this enabled, the approval will have this capabilities to actually reassign to someone. So I mean, it's highly recommended to keep it on unless there is a special requirement that no, you shouldn't, and no one should be able to reassign it. And then you can also make attachment or have an attachment there. Okay. So that's all you need here. But this is not the only thing that you want to do, right? This is sending approval. You need to make some changes also based on the response. So what you need to do then, you need to click another step. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to capture the response that approver is going to send me. They can approve it or they can reject it. And I'm going to update the file properties. So for that, again, you will go to the SharePoint. update file properties. You need to select the site address. This was the library. ID, you will get it already because you already have the trigger that is working on this particular file. So you don't need to make any changes. You can select the ID. And then I have this approval status column, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do, very simple. If you look here, this action that we have used, start and wait for an approval, this is the response that it's going to get once the action is complete. You will get all the response summary, date, outcome, approval ID, all the different information that you need, you will get. But most important one is going to be the outcome. Outcome is going to be whether they have approved it or rejected. Okay. So click save. And once it's saved, I'm going to quickly run a test and then we will see how this goes. While it's doing, let me delete this file because I'm going to try to upload the same file again. So the save. Now there is multiple ways to test it because we are using this trigger when a file is created. My flow is ready, it's ready to go. I can come here and upload the file. But if you guys don't know, generally this trigger of automate takes some time. So it may be, it's not going to be hours, but it may take maybe a couple of minutes. We don't have that much time. So what I'm going to do, and this is also generally you can do when you are testing, you can go here, say manually and test. Now what it's going to happen, now what's going to happen, your flow is actually waiting for the action. It's not going to wait for the trigger, it is just waiting. So when I'm going to come here and upload a file, it immediately going to trigger the flow. So just to save the time, this is the way you can also use it when you are testing. Okay, so file is uploaded. My flow should get trigger. If not, then we will see. Yes, it does. So when file is created, the flow is triggered. Now this request should start and I should be receiving all those different emails that flow is sending. Okay, I'm gonna move my other screen here so we can start seeing the, this is not the one. So in Teams, I got the request. This is the one. So this is the please review. This is the file name that we have just approved. So this is the number one of the way of seeing the approval request. And as I said, the link, if I click on this link, it's going to automatically open the document. I also got the email. So you can see the email already received. I can take action on approve and reject. And if I go back here, and because I'm sending to myself, I can come here. But if I would have sent it to someone else, they can go to their approval received and they can see the same information here. And I also received in my mobile app. So all 4 different notifications are here. I can take action wherever I want. Means it's not really that which one I need to take. So I'm going to go here, say approve and submit. No need to put any comments right now. This is done. If I move back to the flow now, somehow my computer is slow. So it's completed, right? Very simple, but very powerful use of the flow. So my flow is completed, everything looks good, right? So this was a simple flow. Now, when we're talking about making it more complex, sequential, it's going to be continuation of that. I'm going to try to show you the most complex, that state machine workflow. So we're going to go there straight. But if you have multiple approval, the only thing that needs to be changed, as you see here, I have, once this first approve or reject, I'm updating the property. Instead, you will have a second action, and then you will send the request to the second approvers. Then you can create multiple sequential workflow as you need it, and you can keep adding more people. But it's nothing but just keeping the same thing. The only change you will do based on the outcome, if it is approved, you want to move forward. If it is rejected, you just don't want to move forward. Okay. So let me quickly create another one that actually, let me check the time. I think we do have enough time.
Yeah, yes, we have about 23 minutes. Okay, it's
So
10:37 IST. Till 11 we have your session,
okay.
Sandy. So you please park 5-10 minutes for questions. There are quite a few pouring in.
Okay. So let me see where we are right now. So let me do this. Let me save the time because I already have that flow. So instead of creating, this is just to save time because I know this will be a little bit more complex flow. So I'm not going to recreate on the fly, but I want you to understand this is the most important flow that you need to know because this can be very useful in your day-to-day scenario. Okay. So let me walk you through with this, and then we can continue on our screens, and then also the other slides that we have. I'm just trying to find my SharePoint where it goes. Okay. So in this case, I'm gonna quickly go to the another list. It's the wrong one. Okay, so I have this event in itinerary SharePoint list. Okay, this data means I don't want to spend too much time on explaining what this list does and what happened, but you need to understand these three columns here. So in this list, I'm going to create an event itinerary, right? And then I have the request reviewer, and then I also have the request approver, and then I have a request status. If I'm going to click new, right? So I should be selecting who is going to review this request, who is going to approve this request, and the status. Now, what I want that when I create a new request, who is the request reviewer should receive the notification to approve, reject, or send it back to me. And based on the outcome of that, my workflow or approval should move to the next user, and then they can also do the same request. So this is the simple flow. Now I'm going to quickly walk through it because we don't have enough time. If I'm going to create, it's going to take around 15 minutes, and then we will have no time for anything else. So the trigger, as you all know, is very straightforward when an item is created and modified. Remember, I'm not just using when an item is created, I'm using when an item is created and modified. And I'll walk you through why I'm also using modified, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do as soon as the item is going to create it, I'm going to update the item and set the status to in review. And why I'm doing it, because once I'm going to create a new item, the status is going to be submit for review. So that's the first status, or that's the status that's going to tell the SharePoint list of Power Automate flow that it is now ready to submit. Let's move to the next step. And these status can be different. This is just for the demo, right? So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to set the status to in review. So when I submit the request, immediately after I submit, the status will be in review, and I will start and wait for an approval. Okay, this is again simple request. The only thing change here in our last example that we have seen, I was hard coding my name, but here what I'm doing, I'm selecting the requester reviewer email directly from the SharePoint list item that I've created, right? Because I have selected this one. So I have done that. Then what you need to do, you need to create a condition. Why we are doing the conditions? Because we need to check whether the reviewer has approved it or rejected, right? So if they have approved it, then a second thing I would do immediately, I will update the same item again and change the status from in review to pending approval, because reviewer has completed the work. Now it's pending for approval, and repeat the same step here. So starting another approval request where I'm sending this to approval this time, right? Same information I'm getting that I have already provided in my list. So approver email, providing the description and link to item. The same condition that we have used above, based on the outcome of the approver, I'm going to check if outcome is equal to approve. And this approve is nothing but the actual name of the action that they're going to click, right? If it approve, then this is all positive path. If approver is also approve it, that means everything is done. My status of my request is approved. the positive flow, right? Now let's see the negative flow. So negative flow is if the reviewer is actually say that, no, it's not done, I'm not going to approve it, I'm rejecting it. So what will happen here, once that reviewer reject, then you can, this means it's very simple, but there is so much going on, so it's like it looks complex. But when reviewer is going to reject the request, what you're going to do, you're going to do nothing but update the item and set the status of the request, reviewer waiting information, and you can use other terms. That's it. And that's it. You can also send a notification to the requester that, hey, your approval reviewer has rejected and they are looking for more information. And then this flow will end here. As you can see, nothing happening after this happened. And the reason is because once we're going to set the request to reviewer waiting information, me as a submitter or requester will receive the email. I can come back to my request, make the changes, and then when I'm going to submit, I'm going to change the status to submit for review. So when I change it to submit for review, my workflow will restart. And that's the reason we are using when an item is created or modified. So not only first time when I'm creating, but next time when someone has sent it back to me for more changes, I'll make the changes and resubmit, and then it will be restart the workflow, and then it will go through the process again. And then it can keep going as many times as you want. Similar concept on the approval. If approver reject, we will do the same thing. We will change it to approver waiting information, and it will send back to the requester. So this is the concept of creating these complex workflow. If you look in detail, like a little bit more, overall, this is not very complex to create, but the logic that you need to define can be a little complex. Okay, so let me quickly create an item here, and then we will actually, to save time, let me test it. Okay, let me enable it because I disabled it. Oh, come on. It's just my computer is also sleeping, it seems. Okay, so I'm going to say manually test, and then I'll go back to my list. And actually, let me create a quick one. Okay. And most of this information is optional, so I'm going to put myself as a requester, and I'm going to put Elisa as the second approval. I click save. Let me go back to the flow. It should trigger. Hopefully it will trigger. And then we can quickly see. So yes, flow is triggered. Now you need to understand. So, okay, so first thing that I said that it's going to update the item. And if I refresh it, so now the status of this is in review and it is assigned to me. I should receive some notification real quick. Need to wait. This is faster. Teams message is always faster. You're going to receive them first, and then you will follow up by the emails. So as you can see here, I got this request. I'm going to go to the negative path because that is more complex. So I received that. I'm going to say reject. OK, so that means I'm going to the negative path and I'm rejecting because I need more information. If I go to the flow now, once it's request, and you can just quickly see. So I reject it. It goes to the negative path and the flow itself is ended. And if I go back here and if I have the notification, I can see the status has changed that review waiting information. So now what I can do as a requester, I will receive a notification with the detail that reviewer needed. I can come here, make those changes. And then finally, once I'm ready to resubmit, the only thing I would do, I'll come here and then change the status to ready for submit or submit for review, right? Save. Now the flow will automatically gonna start again. This time it will take some time because we are using the standard trigger. Okay, so we need to give it like a few seconds. So this time the flow will trigger automatically and then the process will start. So this way you can create these complex back and forth flow where you can still continue on that, have different people working on it, and they can send it back and forward. Okay, I'll come back to this one when it trigger. It takes maybe 30-40 seconds, and depending on how fast it's running. Okay, that was fast. So the flow triggered again, right? And very similar concept. It is again came back to the reviewer because reviewer had asked for the changes. Maybe this time I got this request again and I say, okay, everything's looking good. I'm going to approve it. So once I approve, the flow will move to the next, right? So next condition, and now it is updating the item. And if you look here, now it's going to say pending approval, right? Because reviewer has completed its work. And now as an approval, I need to go to the approval screen. Hold on for a second. So this is Alisa. I logged in as Alicia. She also received the same request. Similarly, if Alicia or as an approver, if I don't like everything that is there, I can reject. This will take me to the negative path. This particular instance of this approval flow will end. The requester will receive an email. They can make changes. They can work on it, come back, update the status again, and then process will start again. But this time I'm going to just keep it simple. Click approve, and this will actually overall complete this request. And as you can see here, this request has been approved. So simple scenario. There are many more many things that I have not done in here. Like for example, there are possibility where you can skip also. Like for example, I say, okay, if I'm the approver and I'm sending back to the requester, when he or she completes the changes, it should come back to me. You can do that. It's just the logic that you need to do. Okay, so quick example of these workflow. I'm going to quickly back to the slide because I also want to take the questions that you guys are asking. Okay, then we have the reminder and escalation. I think someone asked in the earlier. So we also can set up the reminders. The reminders is nothing but that because as you know, each approval request that you say is only going to valid for 30 days. And if approver is not going to respond between those 30 days, the flow will automatically be canceled. Okay, so you need to make sure that you are setting up that reminder process. It is very simple. You can do it on your existing flow that you have. The only thing that you need to do, you need to check whether the status has been approved or not. Okay, so you can define a variable, and actually I have a flow that I can show you. I was planning to do it on the fly, but I think the timing is not going to be that also. So let me show you that
No
flow as
problem,
well.
Deepak. But I have some multiple questions, 2 to 3 questions. Can I
Okay,
ask?
yeah. So we can quickly go there and last 5 minutes we can have the question. So what you can do is this is a flow that you have seen in the earlier, the simple one, right? That we have created, start the workflow. So if you want to create a reminder also in this, the only thing what you need to do, you need to create a variable. I'm using integer, as you can see here. You can use the Boolean also. Generally, integer is also helpful because this can keep the things simple. So you can create the send reminder, set it to 1 or false, and create a do until loop. Very simple logic is here. And why we are creating this do until loop. So we're gonna keep checking if the send reminder is not 0. Until it's not 0, what we're gonna do, we're gonna delay for, let's say you want to send daily reminder, then you can just say that, okay, every day. If you want to send weekly reminder, you can say weekly, hourly. For the demo, I set it for 10 seconds. So because we can keep sending these emails, and you will check whether the send reminder is 0. That means things has been completed, approved, nothing to do. If it is not 0, that means approver has not approved it, that you will send an email. It's very simple, right? And then you will keep doing it until this change. And because we are doing this do until and the approval request in parallel, so they will gonna both run in the parallel. You will send the approval request, and once the approver update or approver reject or take any action, what you will do, you will just set this variable that you are always tracking from 1 to 0. And the moment it happens, this loop will end. It's very straightforward. So this is how you can send the reminder. And similarly, you can also do the escalation. So the logic is very similar. The same logic goes here. You will keep a particular flag that you can check and do the escalation on and the reminder. Very useful, and you should be doing it. Quickly going to the next slide, I definitely want to talk about the best practice and limitations, because that's going to be the most important one, right? So as you know, this approval workflow is one approval action can run for 30 days. And then it's going to automatically die. So when you are creating these approvals flow, make sure that you are keeping that in mind. And when you're designing and setting up, so that if in case it's going to end, your overall workflow should end before 30 days. So you won't have a situation where this will happen. Okay, and then you have the reminder and escalation patterns, of course, that you need to use so that you can send the reminder, and this will actually eventually going to help in this 30 days. Utilizing of all the different dashboard, as I already said at the beginning, that you shouldn't be limiting the notification, because this is how we want to use it. And then also we don't need to go crazy on the approvers. So don't have like many people doing, instead of you can break your flow into multiple pieces so that you can easily use it and keep it concise. Limitations are very important for you to know, right? So first thing, 30 days that you need to make sure that you are working on it. There are some workaround to do this. Like for example, you can keep checking, and when the 30th days come in, you can restart or reassign to the same user. But generally, if your approver is taking 30 days to approve, you need to do something else, or someone else needs to be approved. Approval escalation. So this escalation is inbuilt feature, right? So the Power Automate doesn't really have that inbuilt that's going to automatically escalate. So if you want to do that, you need to create your own custom thing. Similarly goes to the delegation. Delegation is, for example, if it is assigned to me, and it's not if I'm creating the approval flow, right, and I'm assigning to person A can actually assign it to someone else, but I cannot as a creator. So I have no control over, once the process starts, I cannot do this anything. I can cancel it. That's the only thing I can do. You can use the groups for the assignment. So you can actually, instead of one person, you can actually add a group there, but only mail-enabled Microsoft 365 group and security groups are allowed. So if you have these two, you can use them. So it's not like a SharePoint group you can put there. Okay. And then last two, maybe you won't notice, but if you are creating a flow and if you are getting some errors that you are not really understanding what's going on, it maybe can be the size of the request. So if you are putting lots and lots of information in the request, attaching like many files, so your request size is crossing 5 MB limit, then your flow will not work. Your approval request will not go. Similarly, when you are sending the response, so for example, as approver, if I'm approving and I have capacity to attach or write so many response, and if that is increased to MB, then response will not be accepted. Okay, so these are the key things that you need to remember. Let me go back to the questions. I know there are many, so I'll try to go, or I don't know, Abhinav, if you have.
No, thanks
And
so much,
sorry, guys,
Deepak.
for the rest last me. I don't know. 1 hour doesn't look that big.
Yeah, I have
Quite
some
used to that.
question, Deepak.
Yeah, let's go through. Pratyaksh, we can come there. Let's go through the ones that I've already posted.
Okay.
Request your kind patience. All right. Deepak, if you could open up the chat and look at those, maybe you'll
Yeah,
understand
I'm
them
just
better.
reading through it.
Yeah.
When I see that, okay, infinite loop. Yes, good question. So what you need to do to avoid the infinite loop? Yes, that's true. It can go to the infinite loop, but this one, no, this one. what you need to do here, you need to use the trigger condition. So when you use the trigger condition, your flow will only going to run if that condition is true. And I can quickly show you while I'm reading the other. So you know trigger condition, right? So when you have a trigger, this is a trigger, right? So you can go to the settings here, and you need to definitely should use the trigger condition. And this trigger condition is saying that I'm going to start this flow only if the status is submit for review. That means only when the requester is submitting the request, then only this will run. So this will avoid that infinite loop. Okay, and have you ever used any trigger condition to avoid? Okay, so that's the same thing that you said. Sometime my flow fails in infinite loop, but sometime it doesn't. I haven't find exact. I think this infinite loop is
Yeah.
most probably is going to. So so you will get this error, right? What it is saying, it's saying that you are using the trigger when created and also updating the item. It's going to definitely create infinite loop. So the trigger condition is the key, and that's the only way you can save. But trigger condition also be very carefully used. You shouldn't be making this. Like for example, I shouldn't be changing the status to submit for review in my flow, because that will again create an infinite loop. So use this smartly.
Awesome.
Oh,
There's one more, Deepak, from Eric, that was asked earlier. He has posted a photo. Eric, you could also unmute yourself in case the question is not clear.
yeah, I think
So,
you were asking about the Teams app, right? Let
uh,
me. This is
Eric is
actually in the.
asking, no, Eric is asking about sequential approval generally available, and then he has posted a photograph that includes quality check product. Create a new approval request with respect to, for instance, quality product.
Yeah, so you are actually going here, right? Right, you are going into the Teams approval app and creating a new approval request from here. Is this correct?
Eric, if you want, you can unmute yourself and interact. Okay, that's it. Eric says yes.
Yeah, so this, yes, you can do it here. I think it should be available if I'm not wrong. Uh, this is going to be another way of creating. This is an approval app inside the Teams. So what you can do in this app, you can create your approval request inside the team. This is outside of what we are just talking, where we are actually using Flow to create. But this is inside the Teams where you can create the request. This also has some other options as well. And by the way, those requests that we are getting is going to be available here as well. Okay. Any other question that I may have missed?
Pratyaksh raised the hand. I think someone raised a hand. So
Yeah,
you can
Go ahead,
go ahead
Pratesh.
now.
Deepak, so my first question is that which minimum license is required to run the Power Automate desktop flows?
Yeah,
Like
so
I'm
this
using
is
Office.
flow free. So whatever, so this comes with the Office 365 license. So if you have your Office 365 license, you can create the flow. Whatever I have shown you today, you can do all of that. So the license is going to be, so approvals flow doesn't gonna require you any license. But if you are going to use, for example, SQL, if you're gonna run approvals on the data that is stored in SQL, then you need the license, right? Or any premium, if you are end up using any premium connector in your approval flow, then you need the premium license. Otherwise, with SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, you don't need it.
Okay. So my second question is like if I'm creating one Power Automate desktop flow in one server, and I'm trying to move that flow to another server. So why it is required to some grooming into that server when I'm running that flow?
So this is for Power Automate Desktop you're talking, right?
Yes.
Yes, but the question is going to be how you are moving. Are you moving it like manually, or you are creating a cloud flow? If you are creating a cloud flow to do that, then you need the premium license for that, because Power Automate Desktop you can create. That's the free with Windows 11 that you can create. But if you want to automate that via cloud flow, then you need the license.
Yeah, I'm asking that why it is required to grooming something like I want to like I have to run that flow and I have to tag that flow into the production also that it is working fine or not. Why it is
Uh,
required if I'm completely run that flow into the dev environment?
So you're saying what is required? License? Or I'm not following
No,
the
no.
grooming. Means what do you mean grooming?
Grooming means like if I am running that flow into one server
Mhm.
and I want to share that flow into the another server, it is not running completely or fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This something needs to be checked because there are so many. When you're talking about running on the server, there can be so many things, and it can end up being either uh, the what do you call the multitasking, not multitasking. Yeah, it has to do something with definitely has to do something license, but I need
Like
to know a
it
little
might
bit
be
more in
Yeah,
depth.
possible that
right.
it can be fail into the click UI elements. Like if I'm using click UI elements
Hmm.
into the Power Automate desktop, it can be fail into that.
Yeah, I mean, there may be something going on because you are talking about server to server, right? So definitely something, and definitely I need to see it to answer this because looks like very
Right.
specific use
Pratyek,
case.
so Deepak shared his LinkedIn profile, and this is also available on this. So possibly you could get in touch with him on message and post the
Yeah,
scenario.
go ahead and
Sometimes
ping
it
me.
looks to it takes some it takes some time to look into the specific scenarios. So thank you
Yeah.
for your question, Pratyek, and you can post that on LinkedIn to Deepak directly.
Yep.
I think that is
Yes.
it. Thank you so much, Deepak, for your session. And this was really interactive. I saw so many questions popping up, and answering them along with. So thank you so much for your time. I know it's super late for you, but that is what the passion about community is, and hats off to that. Really.
No, no, no. It was all praise, and I kept it very simple because I mean the complex thing doesn't really make any sense. So this hopefully this will at least give. I mean,
Mhm.
definitely it's not going to give you everything, but at least give you an idea. And if you're not using it, you can start using it. So I'm hoping that this was helpful for all of you. And thank you very much. Thank you for having me, all of you, all the organizer for this event. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Deepak. Good
Thanks,
night and
thanks,
have a
Deepak.
great
Thanks a
weekend.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks a lot.